The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Come to you from underneath a peach blossom. It's time for an episode of BeAuSm. Find positivity throughout your life and work. Just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the BeAuSm Podcast. I am your host, Joshua Peach, with my co-host, Mr. Mark Resnick, on the other side of the table. It's been too long, Mark.
Way too long, Josh, but here we are.
Yes,
back at it.
We are at it, and completely unscripted, as always. We were just talking a couple hours ago, and we've been doing a couple episodes. Our guy Adam at ECAT has let us back into the studio. We haven't been here since December 1st, the Santa Claus episode. And the reason being, it's now close to March. Just a few short days after that, I left for Alaska the next day, got home December 6th, and I became ill with everything other than COVID. And had no voice for a number of weeks and went through 6-8 weeks of basically hell.
So then I got COVID right after.
Yeah.
You recovered, and I got COVID.
Yeah. So it's been a bounce around. So we're just happy to be back here in the studio, and we've got a really kind of a cool guest. They're all cool guests, but this is a really cool guest. So we got Cady in the house.
Hello.
Now, before John starts going, I'm gonna get going. You know Miley Cyrus?
I do.
You do? You know the song Wrecking Ball?
I mean, I don't know the lyrics.
Everybody knows it, right?
I've heard
Cady wrote that song in 1990 in the Oliver Ames cafeteria. So,
Stop.
Yeah, I swear to God.
It didn't get as big back then.
Yeah, it didn't. So John and I were probably two of the smaller sized guys in high school. I didn't have a growth spurt until I was I think a junior for the second time. And so we were at lunch one day, and somebody was giving John a hard time, and he's just eating his lunch, and I'll never forget it. Never really looked up at it. And a bigger guy, and he just goes, "You don't want any of this." And they said, "What?" "I'll come at you like a wrecking ball." And I just stopped. It was amazing. It was just, and that was it. It was just, you don't know what to say.
I'm glad I didn't have to back that up.
I know. That's great.
I believe there were laughs, and then he walked away, and I'm like, I can't believe. And then meanwhile, sweat pouring down my face. I'm like, this is it. Yeah. This is actually my 80s movie moment where I get my ass kicked, my butt kicked.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh my gosh, I might have to steal that. That's a good story.
Oh yeah, no, John and I go back to probably 1985 or 1986, probably youth baseball or something, then middle school, and then junior high school and high school, and he's also got when you talk about an ideal couple that you just kind of look at, that you're just like, wow, they got this stuff figured out. It's his parents.
Nice.
His parents live down the street from me. Now but growing up, they always were smiling. They were always together. They were always everything. They do their walks together to this day. And they've been married how long?
56 years.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Just amazing,
so cool.
Amazing people. And
I'll probably be off a year, and my mom will call me after this. She's like, it's 57, right?
Yeah. But she will tell you, will tell you about my work ethic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She would, I was telling them earlier, I'd be sitting at home watching TV, whatever, munching on popcorn. My parents would come from Shaw's. They're like, "We just saw Josh again." You know how he's a very self-motivated young man. I'm like, "Great, Mom. Yeah. Great. He's a great guy."
Yeah.
He becomes a motivational speaker later on in life. And she's just like, she knew it ahead of time. She's like, "Oh, I'm not surprised."
Yeah, no, your parents are just amazing people, and I get to see them at the grocery store still to this day. I run into them almost every time I go in. I'll see them, and they're just great people. But
thank you.
This is interesting, John, because you and I have you first of all, you've been a BeAuSm follower and fan of sorts. You wear the shirt pretty often. Someone will send me something in town on social media at least once every couple months, because people I love it. People just take random pictures of people they don't even know, which is really cool. It's like a picture and they'll be like, "Hey, I saw this guy at the high school stadium, and they got a picture, and I look at it, and go, oh, that's John Cady. I bet he's probably the most photographed BeAuSm wear of anyone
without knowing it.
Yeah, without knowing it. Most I told you the other day, he's like, oh my god, I didn't really that happened. But so I found out that John is releasing a book, and we'll get into the book. But in kind of preparing for this and kind of checking out what John has been up to the last 30 plus years, because we graduated in the 90s, I found out something really cool that I didn't know and I never thought to ask. But you have a pretty amazing occupation. Yeah.
So I am a teacher, and I teach in a detention center. So they're juvenile offenders, my students. So, which my boss still jokes with me to this day because I didn't remember applying for the job. Like I thought it was. I knew it wasn't a public school. I knew it wasn't a regular public school. So, and I thought it was like a alternative school. So I'm like, at the time, I still didn't. It's such a culture shock from Easton. Like I still didn't know what an alternative school was. But I'm like, oh, it's a job with money coming to me. So, and I'm teaching. So I go there, and not the jail cell, but like the doors like clang shut behind me. I'm like, okay, where am I? And then I see this kid coming down. He was coming back from court, and he's in the handcuffs and everything. I'm like, all right, where am I? I'm like, none of this seems okay. It doesn't seem like what I thought it was. So I sit down, and I'm like, the whole time, I'm like answering their questions for the job, and they're hearing what they want to hear, but I'm like still kind of confused. And she says to me at the end, she said, what, you have any questions? I'm like, I just don't remember applying for this job. In my mind,
am I supposed to be here? Right.
Yeah. Right. In my mind, I'm like, I probably wouldn't have applied for this job. Like this is not where I saw myself. Yeah. But all I pictured was like, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society. I'm like, I really want this. Yeah. But it ended up, so the first few months was like, everything was a culture shock. It was like, okay, you got to count your pencils. Make sure no one has a pencil, because that turns into a shiv. And then you're like, all these different things.
Really?
Even like, they couldn't bring hardcover books back to their room because you can pull a binding out, and the binding is a shiv. Everything's a shiv. Whether you guys know it or not, everything's a shiv. Wow. So it's like, I'm like...
It's a knife.
Well, I know what a shiv is.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know what a shiv is.
Okay.
A lot of people haven't been in a detention center or a jail before that they got to get a shiv out of a toothbrush or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So my mind was blown. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I need a job. So I'm like, let's do this.
Where is the school? Tell us about
So it's over at Taunton State Hospital grounds. Okay. So it's for the Department of Youth Services. They're all over the state, but that's specifically where I am. There's a few in the Southeast region, but other than that, it's just all over the state.
So these are juvenile offenders that they can't go to prison. They can't go yet.
Some of them will, once they're of age, they'll move on to like.
So these kids have done some.
Yeah, some of them have done some pretty bad stuff.
Wow. How long? So
pretty much anything you can think of, some of them have done.
Wow. And so you didn't know you applied for this job, and you've been there for how long?
I'm going into my 17th year.
Wow.
Well, because it's one of those things where it was a happy accident, because after the shock wears off and everything, then you get to know these kids, and they're not afraid to take chances in front of their peers, because it's like in public school, or as they say on the out, they're like, I didn't read unless I had to. I didn't do this, that, and I didn't do any work. And, because it was not cool doing all that in front of their friends, or they just wanted to be the class clown or just hang out and do nothing. So there's benefits to doing the work. Like they get to, they have longer time talking to their parents or visiting with their parents, anything. There's a lot of incentives for it, for them performing. And so when they do perform and they see how good they are, like if you give them, it breaks your heart. Some of the kids you give like a B+ to a kid that he earned a B+, and he's blown away. He's like, are you sure? Like he wants a recount. He's like, it's more, he'll think, and at the best I probably got a C, but like when I'm like, yeah, no, I don't give generous grades. I give the grades you earn. And then they're like, their faces light up, and that's to see them shine when a lot of society, and even myself, I guess at one point, when I said I probably wouldn't have applied there, cast them aside or write them off. But like when you see them shine, it's bright. Mm-hmm. It's blinding, and it's beautiful.
So do you have any, and you don't need to say names or specific examples, but Do you have any of these kids that ended up getting on the out after being in school with you and have come to you and said, "Hey, man, you made a difference"? Or
I've seen one. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I've seen one kid in Target, and he was there with his kids, and he said, and he was saying to his kids, he said, "This is one of the dudes that I liked in there. This is one of the dudes." He was one of my teachers that I'll probably gonna remember for a while. So I'm like, "Thanks, man." I said, and then here's my son. You know? So it was cool. He introduced me to his kids. I introduced him to my kid, and it was just a nice moment. And then there's been success stories, but so one girl went through the system and she ended up going to Columbia Law School, became a wow. It's one of those things. Not everyone gets to see this. You don't get to see this side. You get to see what sometimes what, I don't want to say society, but whoever, when they paint pictures of these kids, you only see that picture that they paint. It's like the opposite of the Facebook life. Facebook, you see the highlights. These kids, sometimes you see just the lowlights. You don't see them shining like that. So I get to see that, and that's why I'm going to be there until...
Well, these kids were written off before they got to you.
Right, yeah.
They were written off while they were out and society, basically.
And probably written off by themselves, too.
Oh, yeah.
Based on their actions.
Absolutely.
I'm done. I'm permanently tattooed.
Definitely.
That's not always the case.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as a result, some of them they don't know how to take a compliment. They don't get mad if you give them a compliment. Just sometimes they think, what's your angle? Why are you giving me a compliment? It's like, you earned one. You know?
Well, it's interesting because, when you say take a compliment, and a lot of them don't know how to even say thank you.
Right.
And that's, I do some work with a group that helps people that don't have a lot. And when I was talking to the director, he was like, because it's reuniting family members and when they're far away from each other type of thing. And he says, a lot of these people, they're like so emotional and so excited to see the loved one, but then, you never hear thank you. And I'm like, it's probably because nobody's ever said thank you to them for them to understand what that means. We're told or been told, hey, when somebody does something good for you, say thank you. And a lot of them, nobody's ever done anything good for them.
Yeah,
right. And so that's one of those things that people have to remember is like, just because someone doesn't say it, it doesn't mean that they know that they're supposed to say it and they don't. Sometimes they just don't. And that's probably a lot of these kids. I was amazed that I was sitting here reading just about your occupation and how you kind of fell into it a little bit. I'm like, man, I didn't know that. I didn't even know that existed. I didn't even know.
That's the thing. A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
That's why numbers, a lot of people don't apply for those jobs because they don't know about it.
Yeah.
And it's I always am telling friends that if they're teachers or if they're thinking of leaving public school, I'm like, come to UIS, man. It's at the end of the day, you feel like $1 million because you see kids succeeding that you don't normally see succeed, or they probably don't feel like they normally succeed. So it makes it completely.
Yeah. You're the last exit, man. Yeah. You're like that's make or break. You could make someone that's been broken by themselves or by others, or you can continue that cycle, and it's done. That's amazing.
Yeah. One of my. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, tell us a little bit about the classroom experience. Are they small classes? What do you teach there? First of all,
just a little bigger than this studio. And for anyone who's listening at home, who's not in the studio, it's a small room, but
10 by 12.
It's the perfect size for this, but. Factor in, would you have a class in here?
No.
With 5 kids, and then there's always a security guard in there with us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I call them security guards, but they're called group workers. They're staff, so
yeah.
But they always seem like I always call them security guards.
I figured you'd be in a wrecking ball. They didn't need that extra. They need that extra weight in
luckily,
there.
You don't have a T-shirt?
Yeah, no, luckily they're just fans. My students, they call me one of the real ones. He's real, so it's one of those, that's their big compliment. Oh, he's a real one. And so.
Explain that. Compared to other teachers who aren't real ones? Or?
I don't know. They never go into it, but I feel like it's kind of like that. And not even when they say real one, they won't even be saying it about a teacher per se. They'll be saying it just about a person in general. They can tell a fake person and whatnot. So.
Yeah.
One time there was 3 kids. They all wanted to fight each other, in my classroom. So it's just it turned this big melee. And this kid, this is my first year teaching, this huge kid, stands in front of me, he blocks me. I'm in the corner of my desk, and I'm like, oh crap, this is how it happens. I'm and he's a monster. I'm I'm not feeling like a wrecking ball right now. I am feeling like a pea. I'm like, this is gonna end bad. And then he goes, he goes, don't worry, John, I'm not going to let anybody touch you. I'm like, thank you.
Wow.
I'm like, yeah.
And he's one of your students.
Yeah, but I was like, thank you. But it was...
Got a heavy watching his back. That's it.
If you're like, if you're honest with them, and I always tell them, I do the same spiel every year when they come in. I'm like, respect to the two-way street. I love giving it. I like getting it. So, and that kind of, you can say it all you want, but until they see that you're like that, that's when I guess you get that real one status.
Yeah.
Action speaks louder than words.
Yeah, especially with them, yeah. Because they've heard people promising them stuff till they're, blue in the face and they don't get the stuff.
Well, typically people that are in situations that they've lived their life where society or people have forced them to earn the respect, and by the time they're worthy, they're so angry that they don't care anymore.
Yeah,
right. And that's why we kind of talk about giving people trust and respect, giving it to them, and then figuring out at the end of the day if it is truly earned, opposed to saying, well, you haven't earned it yet. No, I'm not going to give it to you yet. And so,
well, we definitely want to get to the book, but if I have a few more questions about this, because this is fascinating. So what do you teach? Are you a one subject specialist, or do you teach all the subjects?
So I teach English, and I used to teach English and history for the most part, but now we have a history teacher who is just like, he's a whiz with history. It's like I'm pretty much I've always been like an English teacher, like that was my specialty, but in DYS occasionally they'll ask you to branch out, can you teach history as well? I'm like, yeah, I love history, so I'll go with that. But they know not to ask me to teach like math or science because they want students to pass the MCAS, not just like show up for it.
Oh, so basically it's a regular school. The kids are just different.
Yeah,
in the sense that they've had a little. Yeah. Okay.
So we follow the same framework, standards, and everything that every public school follows. So that way, when a kid leaves us and I put his transcript together, the goal is for him to just be able to go right back into whatever class he would be in, and he'll be where they are on their curriculum map, or not necessarily curriculum map, but he'll be where they are standard and frameworks wise. So it's an easier transition. I imagine it's never easy for them to transition back in, but.
And so what percent of the kids stay? Is it high school? This is a high school, right?
Yeah. So
what percent are there for like all 4 years, as opposed to just 1 year in, 1 year out?
So since I'm in a detention unit, that is a shorter time. You have your detention units. Those are the kids waiting to be like for their trial, and then you have treatment unit, which is kids who have been committed, and then like they're receiving treatment, so they get improve upon themselves. Let's put it that way. And then there's there's a revocation. So it's kind of like us, but as in like those are usually the kids who maybe if they like violated parole or something, and then they go back. It's one of those things. They had already been committed, but then they released, but then they went back.
Okay. So it's not common to have somebody there for 4 years.
No, I think the only time it's very rare that we do, but sometimes it's just some of their court cases drag on. So
wow,
interesting. Wow. And how many years have you been doing it?
I'm going into my 17th.
These kids can't get out. Like they're not. It's like
they're.
It's not. Yeah. It's like it's a, for lack of a better word, fortified building.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're going from, lack of a better word, locked up to the classroom and back. They're
and it's all on the same floor.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Is that really hard though to teach somebody for 6 months and then they might be gone, or you just kind of somebody comes midway through the year, they just whatever you happen to be teaching, that's what they're studying.
Yeah, it's kind of basically it's one of those you just got to adapt to it, and if they've been working on something in their public school that like we just don't like we don't have a teacher who teaches Spanish, for example. So if they have that, then we find like on Edgenuity, I'm sure you might be familiar with it. So Edgenuity is a website where they can learn, like they'll have a course of whatever, like say it's Spanish, or I'd say it's another thing that we don't offer. They can take that and then, that way they're able to stay, like I said, stay moving, stay on the course that they'd be in public school. We'll still teach them regular, like the other stuff that we normally teach, but they'll have that on top of it. That way they're not missing out on that.
That's amazing. It
is.
And I had no idea that there was even this as a program.
No idea.
And to think that there's people, now someone I know that's actually committed to doing this.
Yeah.
while he didn't apply for it. And stayed with it is pretty wild. So first of all, thank you for doing that because that's
thank you.
And it sounds like it's extremely rewarding, and what keeps you going.
Oh yeah, definitely. I always joke with him. I said, "You're stuck with me."
Yeah.
And now and then she goes, "I'm gonna hold you." My boss says, "I'm gonna hold you to that, even if you sell 1 million books."
Yeah.
I'm like, "You're stuck with me."
Yeah.
What the other teachers, are they long timers too, or is it turnover?
Yeah. Well, so this a lot of them have been there like upwards of 10 years, but we'll have like new teachers coming in almost every couple of years. And,
yeah. Were your parents, or was one of your parents an educator?
So they both were at one point. My dad taught science over in Sharon Middle School for 42 years.
Wow.
So, and then my mother, she taught history for a while, and then she left school. Like she taught before I was born, and then she after stayed home a little bit with me, and then afterwards she just went into like the clothing industry.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I thought I remembered one or both of them were educators.
Do you have siblings?
Yes.
And what do they think of your job? And
Oh, they love it. I mean, they're not teaching themselves, but they love where I'm teaching. They love that I'm teaching, and then they love that I'm writing and seeing success there. So they're very very supportive.
Let's just jump at it because I'm a writer too, and Josh is a soon to be writer, so we're very interested in the topic. Like, were you always a writer, and how did this passion get to where it is now?
So I used to love creative writing courses at OA, like with Mrs. O'Reilly, or I forget what.
It was O'Reilly. Yeah, and I never got into that class.
And Mrs. Balboni, like it was like I did it enough. I enjoyed telling the stories back then, but I didn't like all the mechanics of like getting all the grammar completely right and whatnot. So I never really went full into it. And then I went to Manhattan College, and I started majoring in film there. So I was doing with a focus on screenwriting. So that's what I wanted to be. I was like, I want to be a screenwriter. I want to be writing movies. And then I found out, it's all in who you know. And that, like, you can write
like anything, right?
Yeah. I'm like, meanwhile, mine's probably in all the circular files of every like agent and but meanwhile, like Carrot Top's making movies, which is great. Which is great.
I thought you were going to be a comedian, by the way.
I tried that for a little bit.
Oh, did you really?
But only because I was unemployed, and our friend Mike Denson made $100 bet with me, and I'm like, I don't have $100. I guess I better go tell some jokes.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's great.
That's
that for
awesome. Yeah, he was a riot. Like the wrecking ball thing was hysterical, but it was also something for him to save himself. But as far as humor, you were the funniest in high school or something, weren't you?
You and I, we were the class clowns.
Oh, is that what it was? Is that what we got for the superlative or whatever? I thought it was most humorous or something. Class clown, good. That's what we both got it.
No, was that your fourth year or your fifth year?
Oh, yeah, that was. So I stayed back. So he was able to get it able to get it in the right year. I got it in the wrong.
Wait,
year.
Did you graduate together?
No, we went to school together until high school, and then I stayed back, and he continued on.
Oh, you stayed back at 9th?
I stayed back, and it depends on who you talk to, 10th or 11th.
Oh, okay. So you graduated a year ahead of him, technically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't technically win class clown, but we were the funniest.
Yeah.
I don't know who took it.
It was given. It was just a given. So, this isn't your first releases. You've written other.
Yeah. So I've had my first debut novella, they call them. I didn't even know that was a word until I wrote one that wasn't long enough to be a novel. They're like, that's a novella, and I'm like, that's a thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I'm like, yeah. So it's a novella, and then so it was a middle grade horror book it's kind of like in the Goosebumps like kind of genre. So I had fun doing that. I wrote a couple of those, and my wife's cousin had gotten me into writing horror. Like I used to love, my favorite book's Catcher in the Rye, so I kept trying to write Catcher in the Rye. Like that was my like favorite kind of thing. So I tried to write a couple of those, and then I went to like the kid thing, and then my wife's cousin one time at a cookout, he says, "Do you ever think about writing horror?" And I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't even like horror movies. I don't like horror. There's nothing about horror I enjoy. And then so he's like, oh well, there's like you can submit stories to an anthology, and it can end up on the shelves in Barnes and Noble, like all the anthologies in the horror, and like it's easier to get into horror per se, because the community like it's everyone supports each other, and it's all indie publishers. And I'm like, okay, I like horror. I'm like, so I wrote a short story to submit it to an anthology, and my sister is my beta reader, so I'm like, yeah, she's gonna be honest with me about everything. So I sent it to her. She's like, the writing's good, but you didn't kill anyone. I'm like, yeah, I know. And she's like, it's horror. You got to kill someone. And I'm like,
People have to die.
I had like the Jerry Seinfeld voice. I'm like, well, I don't want to kill anyone. And she's like, well, then you don't want to make money writing horror. And I'm like, all right. And so I'm like writing, so like I wrote a story, and then it was someone read it, and they're like, ooh, that was dark. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm
So
like,
you went from not killing anyone to
I went from
He's on the watch list.
I went from not killing anyone to like, what's wrong with you? Real quick.
Yeah.
I'm like, and then this story, I had written this like 10 years ago, the Angel of Death one. And so I was chopping that around to like, not to jump back, but I was chopping that around to like agents back then. And like some agents were like, well, you know, angels aren't big. No one wants angels. And I'm like, everyone wants angels. And he's like, no. He's like, no. He's like, this is my business. He goes, I know, no one wants angels. I'm like, what do they want? And he's like, werewolves and vampires. I'm like, Twilight. You know, I want Twilight. And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, I can't write Twilight. I'm like, I don't know anything about that stuff. So,
But you said screw that. You stuck with it.
yeah. So that's the funny thing. So I didn't even think about that for a while. And then one day, like I had like, because the groups of students I have, they get, you know, they switch out all the time. Like every few months, I get a new group of students in there pretty much. And with some sprinkled from the last group into the, you know, just that's the way it goes. And so we got one group that loved fantasy. Like they were reading whatever I had on the shelf in there, and you know, Harry Potter, everything you could think of, they were reading. And I was like, you guys love this. And again, it like a lot of them admittedly gang affiliated. They're like, on the out, I don't read at all. You know, I wouldn't be caught dead reading on the out. But then they're like diving into books in there. I'm like, no one sees this part of you. You know, but I'm like, I didn't even say that to them. I'm like, no, just keep reading. You know, and then so I was like, it brought in books for some of them to read that if we didn't have them there. And so I was like, this is just great to see. And they help each other. Like some kids who won't read in class just because they're self-conscious, the other kids will cheer them along. And like that, those moments are the best moments. Like I'm almost like, when I see it, I'm like almost in tears. And I'm like, but I'm not going to cry in front of gang members. Just not going to.
You know what's
a
so awesome?
A wrecking ball doesn't cry in front of gang members.
What's so awesome about this, besides the fact that you want to cry in front of gangbangers, is that we're talking about the book, and here he keeps going back to his work.
Yeah,
it's so great. You know what I mean? Like let's talk about the book. Well, and it comes back to the kids. It's so cool.
Well, they're a big part of it. Like they like those books, but then one kid was saying he's like, I just don't relate to any of these people. Like. I'm like, oh, you know, well, it's fantasy, you know, no one really does. And then he's like, no, you can relate to the person, like the character, like you know, you get Katniss from Hunger Games and all, you know.
Right.
So he's like, some people can relate to them. I can't relate to them. And, you know, without saying it, like they're saying, you know, it's almost like a culture thing. Like these kids aren't from the hood. They're not from the streets. They don't, you know, and it's one of those things I'm like, I wish I knew how to write fantasy, because fantasy would just be like, at that point, even in my head, I'm like, fantasy would just be goofy coming from me. Like, so I'm like, it's one of the, like, I didn't think my writing skills weren't there, but my storytelling within that genre was not there. So I'm like, I don't have anything for you. And so, not that night, because that would be too much of a Hollywood movie, but at some point in that span of time, I had a dream where I'm sitting in a nursing home, like, room, kind of like the one that my grandmother was in, but I'm sitting there and there's a guy next to me, and I'm like, an elderly guy lying down. I'm like, I don't know who this is. Like, but I'm just going to sit here. This is a dream. So, you know, I'm not thinking it's a dream at the time. I'm like, I don't know who this is. And then a girl, like Angela basically walks into the room. Like this is in chapter 2 of the book. She walks in and looks at me and then like bends over, kisses the guy on the forehead, and all of a sudden, and leaves the room, and all of a sudden he's dead. And I'm like, what just happened? I'm like, I'm still like in dream mode, so I'm not knowing it's a dream. So I'm like, what is this? What's happening? And then I wake up, write it down right away in a notebook. I do that a lot now. I like whatever I dream of. If it's like I can put that in the book, I write it down right when I wake up. Drives my wife crazy, but it's like she's like, just put it on your phone. I'm like, can't get it in the book. Yeah. So I love it. So, but that was one of those things. I'm like, oh, that might have been something. And then from there, and again, it went back to those kids. Like, she kind of could possibly relate to them. You know, it could be that kind of situation. And so I did a lot of research on gangs and stuff, like in that lifestyle. And I did a lot of research, like just on angels, and it brought into the biblical stuff. So like a lot of it's in there. And so I'm like, oh, all right. So I pieced it together, and then the premise kind of came out of that. So they helped me without even knowing they helped me. And so I wrote the book. Yeah. The book's basically written for them. I want everyone to enjoy it, but it's basically written for them, so they have a protagonist that they can relate to.
Well, that's what I always said. I said to Josh, who are you writing your book for? Who's the ideal avatar, the audience? And you have yours perfectly laid out for you, and you can go anywhere with that. You can do a whole series. You can keep Angela going forever.
That's what I'm hoping.
Or you can come up with a new character that so that good for you. That is so amazing. Circle back to the. The agent said, we're not looking for this. So what, did you resubmit Angela to a different agent or publisher? Or?
So I've shopped that around to hundreds of agents, and they all some of them send me the first 10 pages, and they're like, I love the reading, but I love the writing, but I just can't. No one
same
at
thing.
least a handful of them are like, no one wants angels, and I'm like, all right, no one wants angels. But then so I just shelved it for a while, and then one of the publisher at Water Tower Hill Publishing, Josh Lloyd Fox, he's an author also, and he's written he shared something. He wrote his Archangel Missions, it's a series of angels books, and I'm like, all right.
Light bulb.
I'm like, I send a little blurb of it to the synopsis to him because I was friends with him on Facebook, and he says, "You brilliant bastard, send me the rest of it." I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, forget you, agents.
Yes.
That's so cool.
I cut out the middleman.
Yeah, you skipped the agent. You went right to the publisher.
Yeah. So, and they're wonderful. He and his wife Heather, he's the main the main person who runs the publishing company, and she's the editor. I think they both run it, but she's the editor, and she's they're both just amazing.
Yeah.
Do they specialize in YA?
No, so they specialize in fantasy, and she's well known within that horror field, horror industry.
But they really love inspirational speakers, right, Josh?
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Yeah. I think that should be their new genre.
Yeah.
Yes. As we'll promoting the publisher.
Well, I'm finishing reading his memoir now.
Oh, there you go.
Josh's memoir, and he's another Josh.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, it's a motivate. Josh is they're motivating people.
Let's
make the introduction.
That's right.
Yeah. They're motivating it.
Back to you.
Yeah. So, is your book a fantasy or a horror book?
It's fantasy. This one. Yeah.
So there's not a lot of death.
No, I mean there's some, but it's it's kind of they work.
I don't want people to die.
They take it it's that's her job to take souls. Basically, the souls are going up to heaven. So it's one of that's her job to take souls and also to save the souls of her friends who are in the gang because they're going down the wrong path, and so she needs to save them. So
wow,
nice. How long is it?
So originally it was it's 200 pages, but originally it was 400 pages, and I had so I thought one of the reasons why agents weren't interested in it is because it was too short for fantasy. So because I'm thinking all those Harry Potter books are like that, and I'm like, I am not filling that.
400 pages is a lot.
Yeah. Well, it was it was 200. It was 2 books, and then I had stopped after 200 something. And so I'm like, all right, well, I better combine these, and then I'll shop it around again, and then still same answers. But the funny thing is, when Josh got a hold of it, he said, I like it. He goes, do you ever any issue with me cutting it in half and making 2 books out of it? And I'm like, that's what they started out as. I'm like, go for it. And he goes, yeah, these first 2 books of the trilogy. I'm like, trilogy? I'm like Star Wars. I'm fanboying. I'm like, trilogy. I'm like, I better get started on that 3rd book then.
So you literally have your 2nd book already done.
Yeah. So that comes out in September.
Wow.
Yeah. Tell us about my experience with publishing is self-publishing. So you have a publisher, but you're still responsible for sort of doing a lot of your own promotion. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're doing to promote the book?
So mostly just social media, for example, I was checking the Amazon today, and that came up, for new releases. It said, number 1 spot on new releases. I'm like, it's not even released yet. So, but I'm just, every time I see something like that, I'm going to put it out there, and then, but Smart. When I do that, now I'll get random comments in the section, and like, I just ordered it. I'm like, oh, this is working out. And then I did the Bold Journey magazine, that interview, and I had I had never done an interview with a magazine before, so I was like, this is kind of cool. Everything's like kind of cool because I wasn't. I found out that that's half of the job. Like I'm sitting there with the other book. I didn't do any of that. I didn't even like. I was not motivated in the way that I thought it would be. I was motivated for writing the stories, but I didn't get as motivated as I should have been promoting the books.
Yeah, that's what they say, right? It's most authors love the writing and hate the selling, and that's why they sell 500 or less copies. And so good for you. That's great. Sounds like you're going to sell a lot. The beauty about that Amazon pre-sales is once it releases, you'll be a number one bestseller.
Yeah.
And then you'll be a number one bestseller for your whole life. We're talking to a number one bestseller.
Wow.
Yeah.
We are?
I'm still learning about this book stuff. I'm such a novice. It's been a long, lonely journey till Mark came along, and now it's going to be amazing when it's done. But
now writing. I mean, it's the coolest thing, as you know, right?
Yeah.
When people say when it comes out, people are going to be like, "John, I read your book. I really liked it," and you're just like, "Huh? I don't even know this person." You know what I mean? It's such a cool feeling.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm getting excited. I'm already excited. I'm like beyond excited. Like excited was like a mile away.
Yeah.
But it was so every new step. Like even this is. I wasn't thinking on this level. Like this time with the other, like last year with the other book, I was not thinking this. I was like, oh, it's just cool, and I get to write it, and then someone published it. But now I'm like. I'm going on, like, I'm doing I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing interviews. It's one of those things, like, it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, again, the cool thing is you're on this podcast for several reasons because you grew up with Josh as remain friends. But what you do is so incredible. It's so awesome. Yeah. And you happen to have an awesome book. Like, it's a double, your story is so good.
Well, it ties with everything.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Just, keep doing this. Keep getting on as many podcasts as you can because it's you're not just talking about your book, you're talking about your job. And you can't talk about one without the other because those kids influenced you.
Right. And I want people to know about those kids. Like, they do, like I always joke, I'll say to my wife, I'm like, I'll come home and I'll be like bragging. I'm like, this kid got, he read 3 pages from me. Like he didn't, a month ago, he's reading 1 paragraph and he was even hesitant to do that. It's just, you seeing them do this stuff is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. So cool.
Now you just got to figure out a book that you can give to them to go back to their room that they don't turn into a shiv.
Yeah, well, paperback. They can do that.
Oh, they can do paperback. All right, well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I really want to see what they think of this. Like I snuck so a couple of the horror books, like horror short stories, around like Halloween. I read them with them over the years, and like I'll take my name out of it. I'll just leave the title up there just to see what they think.
Good idea.
Like one of them, they just like. I'm like, did you guys know I wrote that? Like, because they were trashing it. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, it's a good story. I'm like, that's actually kind of scary. And they're like, no, it isn't. They watch all like the Saw movies and everything. That's not scary.
What a great beta tester group, though, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if you've got your audience and that's who you know who it is, that's
if you get them to like it. Yeah. Have they read a lot of the book, the new one?
Not the new one. They haven't. So I'll bring.
Do they know?
They know about it. They always tell like bring the book in. I'm like, it's not out yet. And they're like, all right, when it comes out, if I'm still here, it's always if I'm still here.
I know. That's the sad part of it, but.
Well, they can look at it when they get out. They can get it. So.
Well, I mean, Again, I'm still not clear on the getting out. Are they getting out to go back to a family home, or are they getting out being they're going to the next level of?
Well, so it all depends. So sometimes it's whatever happens at court for them. Like, worst case scenario, they get committed. Other than that, some of them they'll go home to their parents or their guardians, and then some of them will go to DCF. And so it's kind of it all across the board.
Yeah, I'm sure you've learned a lot about that process, the juvenile process, and different levels, and it's tough.
I think I've only ever had one kid from Easton. Well, like obviously I won't say names, but like it was one of those things where like he was acting tough to like all the Boston kids, and I'm like, shut up. They all think I live in Bellingham. Like I told them I live in Bellingham.
Where do you live, Bellingham? Where's that? Great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Don't worry about it. Yeah. And then the kid from Bellingham ended up there once, and I'm like, crap. I'm like, anybody know Peabody?
Yeah.
It's like, and I always live on Main Street. Main Street. Everyone has everyone has a Main Street.
1234 Main Street.
Yeah, I'm right near the light.
So this is a stupid question. I'm gonna probably tell Adam to crop it out, but you say a lot of this stuff came from your dreams, and I only know what you've said in here. But do you ever think, or is the thought in any piece of this that you're in real life Angela, not like Angela, but I mean, you're touching these kids' souls and making a difference in some of their lives that you see in Target. And I don't know if anybody's asked you this or if this is something you've thought about, but I'm just sitting here going, "This is
not a dumb question. That's a great question."
I'm just sitting here going,
I didn't think of that.
I'm just sitting here going, John sounds to me like he could be someone that is touching these gang members' souls and making
trying
a
to get
difference
them
in
out of
their
the
life
gangs
and saving, in essence, potentially saving their lives. And so
I never thought about that. That's kind of deep.
It is deep.
Well, geez.
We need to flesh this out in the podcast.
I'm listening to him like,
you know what? I am Angela.
But no, I mean, I'm listening to him share, and like I do the same thing, but differently, because my brain is going with a lot of business things and other things that, I'll have a dream that I process and write and do things, but a lot of times, a lot of the things that I talk about or I do or things that come through in a dream or something, I'm like, well, I talk about something else or someone else. It's really, it's kind of like we're talking about with my book. You need to do a lot of the layout of my book, because I can't write about the stuff that I want to write about without feeling something. And like, I sit here and listening to this story and how he keeps intertwining it. I'm like, oh my God, this is,
yeah.
I never thought about that. That's really cool.
Well, there you go.
I'm not very good at waking up. I dream a lot. Some people don't dream. Like, I remember my dreams every night.
Yeah. And
even when I have a really good dream, I don't get out of bed and write it down. I've always wanted to do that, but I guess I'm too selfish or lazy. But like, that's so great that you do that. A lot of writers do that. They just wake up and they just bounce it down.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start doing that, Josh.
And it's one of those things, especially after that like dream, and after I started writing that story, I'm like, I was treating it was like in my mind, it was like a divine intervention. I'm like, so I kept like, every time I went to bed, I'm like, you got anything else? Almost treating God like he's a genie. You got anything else for me?
I'm really stuck in chapter 3.
Do I at least get 3? 3 wishes.
Give me something. Not to shift gears, but I'm almost out of this, and I have to have a sip of water after everyone. But did you see the name of this?
Besides Liquid Death?
Because I thought it was a horror. I thought this was
a
horror book.
Yeah.
I went into Shaw's to get some more Liquid Death. We're really looking at some point. We're hoping to get an aluminum can water sponsor. Nice. So right now we pay full price for Liquid Death, which it isn't cheap, but it's delicious. Yeah. And I went over to get some today, and this flavor is Resnick Peach.
Wow.
So I was like, well, there you go. I don't like peach flavored stuff, but iced tea, agave, vitamins.
Dude, you're on fire today.
Rest in
peach.
You should be on the side of a mountain somewhere.
Angela's John. I got this. I got this all day.
Yeah, exactly.
I slept well last night.
Did you?
No.
I didn't either.
My daughter will be psyched when I tell her I was drinking Liquid Death.
Like
she came, her and her friends, they were at a party one time, and it was like the house was massive. It was like one of those like neighborhoods I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Because so far, I'm not going to be there. But it was like one of the, like, I picked them up or whatever, and she comes out and she goes, I got you some rich people water.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And she goes, Liquid Death. And I'm like, that's water. Like, I didn't know the name of that. I had never heard the name before. I'm like, that's water? And she's like, yeah. And then I tasted it. I'm like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Well, the idea with aluminum cans is it can be recycled over and over again, opposed to plastic and microplastics and fish, which I read about, which scare me because apparently you eat fish that have plastic in them and you get the plastic inside of you and it doesn't come out. So,
Plus Santa Claus is really big into the environment.
Santa Claus and Sierra Club and all that stuff. So it's a big deal all around. Man, this is awesome about the book. Congratulations!
Thank you very much.
I'm really excited at the whole. I mean, the whole story. Like, you could write a real, not fantasy story. I mean, when you said, this is made like one thing away from made for TV, like it really, you have a script right there for a made for TV.
Yeah.
That's just like, I'm blown away because
me too.
John and I we have stayed in contact enough over the last 30 years, but we haven't stayed in contact enough. And I don't do social media, as you know, so I don't. But like I think I have to message him on social media up until I got his cell phone a couple of weeks ago. Be the way we got a hold of each other. But
I think it's coming full circle, because this is you're eventually gonna write the screenplay, either for your own life story, kind of like American Fiction, or this trilogy here.
Yeah,
so,
that would be awesome.
I think you could. you could stick with the DOS and the kids. That's something you want to stay forever. But I think you might have a future.
Yeah,
here.
this is amazing. Like it's just, and it's so much. There's so much there that nobody knows about, right? And that everybody should know about. Like everybody should know that. I mean, there's just a million different things. To never give up on someone and to have that care and to do what you do and to make a difference and all. I mean, it's just. It's amazing.
So plug the book again, where people can get it, or if you have an author website or your social handles, tell listeners where they can get it.
So the book, Angel of Death, and the paperbacks, and actually all the formats can be found right now on the publishing website, which is watertowerhill.com, and also it's available. If you don't go there, you can go. It's on Amazon. It's on. I found out the other day it was on Walmart.com, which was kind of cool because I didn't know that was gonna happen. So that was really cool. And it's on BarnesandNoble.com, and so
great.
I guess the list is growing. So I hope that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I think the cool thing is with having a publisher is that any bookstore, independent bookstore can order it. So if you live remotely, you can just go to your bookseller and say, "Hey, I want to order a copy," and they can do that for you. Which is cool. Do you have an author website or a presence on social media that's not personal or just geared toward the book yet?
I don't have an author website per se, but I have. So on Facebook, I just started last week. Instead of like just my own regular Facebook one, I have it's John Cady author. So then I have on Twitter, and Instagram. Basically, it's all John Cady author like each time. So
great,
but awesome. And it's. Sorry, like the main, they're all like right there, easier to find on the web, like the publisher's website. So it's great though. They've signed a few authors, and it's all like they really set the tone for like camaraderie. So everyone's lifting each other up, and it's kind of like, again, it almost goes full circle to those kids helping each other read. Like everything when everyone's helping each other and everybody wins with everyone's victory, it ends. It can't possibly end bad.
I couldn't agree more. That's it's good. That's the kind of environment they set. That's the kind of environment I love because I see people thrive in it. Yeah. No, that's really terrific. And that's a kind of a great way to close too, right? That's like the messaging.
I think it is, and I think what we want to do. I was just trying to see about ordering it in paperback. So what we're going to do is we're going to. For the next if we get 5-star rating and reviews, and they put
from the podcast,
from this podcast, we'll just say the next 5. We've got some books going out, so here's what's going to happen. If we get 5-star rating and review, send an email to Josh at BeAuSm, JOSH at BeAUSM.com. If you do a 5-star rating and review, email Josh at BeAuSm.com and put Wrecking Ball in the subject line. We're going to do 5 books, paperback. We're going to give them to you. We're going to pre-order them so that we can get you in the top number 1 seed, and you give those 5 books to your students at the school. All right, and that'll be our small thank you to you to get you off and started with getting some of those kids to read your book and give their feedback, which I know that they're going to love. So,
thank you.
5-star rating and review. You do that on Apple. Spotify, wherever, but email me and put Wrecking Ball on the subject line, because I think that's going to be the name of this podcast. It's going to be Sitting Down with the Wrecking Ball.
Love it.
And we'll have all the ways that you can buy on the show notes. Man, this is great. When you think about, when you think about us being kids in Militia Park, and a blink of the eye ago.
Oh
right?
yeah,
just kids.
I just thought about that the other day. Well, so. My son plays on a team with a couple kids, and so the parents were talking. I'm like, how it's so competitive. The kids, they're all doing all these different like trainings now, and all these like skill centers. And I'm like, I remember showing up to militia wearing just my uniform shirt and like literally jeans, jeans. I'm like,
me and Pete Bosader were the only 2 people that had actual baseball pants.
Yeah.
And his dad, Butch Bosader, who passed away, who was a great guy.
Oh, definitely great guy. Pete's a great guy
coach.
too.
Yeah. I'll never forget. I was in. I think you were on the baseball team. I was on in like the 3rd or 4th grade when the ball went through my lip.
Through your what?
I think you were on
lip.
Maybe. Mr. Bosader was our coach, and I was awful. My parents thought it was a good idea that I try everything, and I'm an athlete at nothing. And baseball was definitely it. So I got my first game. I've got my father's baseball glove, which is like 100 years old. There's no leather left on it. Playing second base. And the game hadn't even started. It's the first game. And they throw from home, which I think we were still playing T-ball. So I don't even know why there'd be a throw from home to stop us. But it was just the process.
It's the
But I put my glove in front of me like this. The ball hits the glove, bounces off, hits me right in the bottom lip. My teeth go through my bottom lip. They're like connected. I'd get them cut out. And I can't remember what Mr. Bosadas said, but it was something like, "You're not supposed to catch it with your mouth."
Oh my God! Was that your last game? Or did they make you go back?
No. I was when he mentioned Mike Denson. I played on the Orioles. He was a wicked pitcher, and we were in the 5th or 6th grade. Our uniform was yellow and purple. I think I still have the team picture, but we knocked it out of the park. We won the World Series in Militia Park that year. You were on the Red Sox, I think.
Yeah, I didn't I don't recall too many winning seasons.
So my coach on the Orioles had a play for me, Mr. Cunningham, Cummings, Mr. Cummings. I can't remember who the other coach was, but he was a third base coach, and he had a very special
Just for you.
That was get hit by a pitch.
That was my specialty.
Yes,
specialty. Strikeouts and hit by pitch.
Yeah, but it's funny as we get older. It's funny, you hear stories when we were kids. We hear older people talk about when they were kids and all this other stuff. And I think I have a very I don't know that it's unique, but I think I'm very fortunate in which somehow my life has allowed me to have a lot of people in my life going back to when I was real little, right? Mm-hmm. And still be in my life, not necessarily my everyday life, but something like this where it's like, hey, haven't talked or sat down with each other for a long time, but it's like you never missed a beat, right? And to just watch us go from little kids showing up at the baseball field with jeans and a t-shirt on to play a game to, doing this amazing work and figuring out how to put this book that's going to make an impact in countless lives. It's just really cool. It's just a really amazing way to live life. And I'm just very lucky and honored to have people like that in my life. And to be, I was sitting at the Pittsburgh airport and his brother-in-law calls me. He says, "Hey, do you know John's releasing a book?" And I said, "No." I was talking about some insurance stuff. Unfortunately, I've got a child that's driving. That's If you got kids, keep them young. Don't let them get their licenses.
Mine just
cars.
got her permit.
Oh man, it's well. I mean, you got family in the insurance business, so hopefully they get some sort of family discount. But I've been talking to Tim pretty often, which Morse Insurance is an amazing insurance provider. They've been providing me since 1991 when I got my license. But he says, John got a book coming out on March 25th. I'm like, I need to have him on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I called him up and said, "Hey, what do you think about being on the podcast? Let's see if we can influence one or two people, and it'd be just great to see you." And I had no idea that this is where we were going to go and what I would learn, and just be so amazingly impressed with the work that you do. Thank you. That is phenomenal, and the reward you must feel at the end of the day. Before you go, and I didn't know this, but before you go, for your nighttime writing, got your BeAuSm book.
Thank you.
And then this was the real prize. So we made a shirt, limited edition, 100 shirts. This is before you, Mark. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
But this is a limited edition. I thought it was a horror thing, but it could still be fantasy. We made a Steve the Jerk shirt, which is our mascot rooster. So that's the back of it, and it's a Halloween scene from our house.
Why aren't those on the site? Those are great.
Nobody would buy those.
I would buy Steve the Rooster shirt.
Well, all right. Well, we'll have to put them back on.
Back.
I'll be wearing this around town.
Get
the picture of that.
I'll tell you what. We'll buy a 6th book for the first person that sends a picture of the wrecking ball
and Steve the Rooster
in the Steve the Rooster shirt. Not to be screwed up with the other shirts, but no, man. Hey, much success. Would love to have you on before the launch of the second book. Let's hear how the first book is going. Get everything done and. I mean, it's just amazing when we were talking about publishers and all the stuff he's teaching me about. It's not an easy task, and it's not you make a phone call to someone and say, "Hey, I have a book idea," and they just say, "Hey, that's great. Let's put it out there." Like that's a lot of work, and people don't often see the back end of what you have to do to get there. So,
like even the meetings that I was psyched to get called into them, like just to look at like the cover art and all these different like things. I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't necessarily involved in that aspect with the other book, and I didn't know enough about anything to like. I was just like, hey, I got a book published, it's coming out. Kids are gonna read it. I'm psyched about that. So it's one of those things where I'm like, now when they want to be involved in like checking out the cover art, all this different stuff. What do you think of that? What do you think? How do you should it be that color? I'm like, ooh,
That's
you want
great.
me to know?
Yeah.
No,
really, congratulations.
That's
Thank
awesome. And you don't need to tell your parents hi from me because I'll just tell them hi when I drive by while they're walking or at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Or your sister's part of the neighborhood watch, her and Timmy, when they go on their walk. So no, that'll do it. This has been a great episode. You just go. I just see you.
Yeah, well,
you light up anytime somebody that's writing and doing this stuff. You're in a whole different place. You're in your space, and it's because he hangs out with me. We went to Canada and he's reading and writing and doing all this stuff, and I'm telling stories and eating beef jerky and trying to figure out how it all comes together, and he's just so putting it all together.
Well,
it's amazing.
we're wrapping up here, but you said it the best. Like the people in your writing community at the publishing house, like everybody, you're getting a club.
Yeah.
You just want so badly for other writers to do well because it's so freaking hard.
Yeah.
So I'm just so happy for you. And
it is a neat community from what I've started to see.
Yeah, you go online and you start using Twitter and everyone's like, oh yeah, I could use a lift and help. It's cool. It's cool.
They love lifting each other, and then. So there was one last, I don't know if it was one last story, whatever. There was like last year at one point, there was one of the horror writers name escapes me now. Like I'm not even keeping his name out on purpose. I can't remember the name.
Stephen King.
He was going through a tough time, and so a bunch of the other authors started like a GoFundMe thing for him without even it's one of those things like they lift each other up. It's awesome to see.
Yeah,
it really is.
No, that's great. That is phenomenal, and I'm learning more and more as every episode and every day goes on, and I'm excited to be part of this community as I start to learn and figure out this writing thing. So
yeah, definitely.
And this is the closing, our exciting news that we were working on because we didn't talk about this. We haven't talked about it because it just came out. So when we were in Canada, Mark forgot that I had talked to him about this in months prior. In my speaking, I came across a young man. He was about 14 years old. I did a summer camp, and there's 400 kids. And this young man had the courage enough to stand in front of all 400 of his peers and ask me a question. Because at the end of my keynotes, I do an Ask Peach Anything. You can ask me any question about anything at all, and I'll give you the answer that I best understand or know it to be. And he stood up and he said, "What do you do when you're not awesome?" And
when you don't feel awesome.
Yeah. It still gets me. So I said to him, "Hey, you are awesome." And I didn't think anything about it. This was in 2022. And it just sat in my brain. And then one night I just looked and I was like, "Hey, can we put You Are Awesome together in the periodic elements?" And you can, kind of, just like BeAuSm. And so we went and we started doing the trademark work. And for those of you that can see it, this is our newest logo. Because it's 4 periodic elements, we got to put it together. But it says You Are Awesome. It's uranium and argon added with beryllium and samarium, or rather gold and samarium. Beryllium is taken out, and so we've just launched it. We just sold our first batch of shirts. We're going through the trademark process of it, and that actually we're going to let the cat out of the bag. I guess I can. That's actually going to be no.
Oh, let it out of the bag.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
okay. And so when we were in Canada, we talked about it. It wasn't just about shirts. That's what the book is going to be titled. So we struggled with BeAuSm for the last couple of years because so many people don't know that they are. And so the book is going to be titled You Are Awesome, and with the periodic elements. And that's something that's exciting. So buy the shirts, buy the merch, have fun. Remember, we're going to change If You Can Be Anything, Be Awesome. We're going to say You Are Awesome because you are. Anyone that listens to this and anyone you interact with, they're awesome. It's a pretty unique lottery that we all hit to be here every day, and appreciate you sitting with us, John, getting us back on track on the podcast. So that'll do it. You are awesome. Have a great day.
Coming to you from underneath a peach blossom. It's time for an episode of BeAuSm. Find positivity throughout your life and work. Just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.